What it do? It's Chuck Nasty here. Welcome to my channel. I hope you're all having a lovely and blessed day. I am here because I am today, my first video, starting out with an NBA ramble. I have a lot of thoughts surrounding the league, and especially as a lifelong Detroit fan, I just want to get my thoughts out, but this is more of a me thing. This channel, I'm hoping the vision I have for it is to really just be a spot where I can upload my thoughts. And if people care enough to watch, hell yeah, that's awesome. But if not, it's more of a me thing and just kind of something to work on in my free time. So thank you if you are watching this. Hope you feel inclined to subscribe after watching. Just a disclaimer that I'm still growing in my own NBA knowledge. I've only been seriously watching the league for probably a year and a half now. Granted, I watched a lot growing up, but it was just it was more for enjoyment rather than the analytical side of things. But without further ado, for today's video, what we're going to do is just ramble, talk about, at least in this video, the Eastern Conference as a whole, talk about some of the trades that may have gone down in the last week or so with the trade deadline, and really just talk about the direction of all these teams as we're heading into the All-Star break. So without further ado, I'm going to just start rambling. First and foremost, we're going to start out with the Miami Heat, a really underrated team, in my opinion, for a team that was there in the finals in the bubble, upset the Bucks in 2020. And then last year in 2021, after a short off season dealing with some injuries throughout the year, they lost in 4 to the eventual champion Milwaukee Bucks. And honestly, now that this team has kind of rebounded and found its groove, I really think that this team's super scary. Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry, Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, Bam Adebayo, putting up great numbers. It's a scary team when they're clicking. And obviously they're fighting for that top seed against a lot of the other teams. There weren't really any acquisitions with the Miami Heat. I kind of foresee, well, let's see. I have a document written up, and this will get ahead of me, but I see this team finishing around that 1 through 3 spot. Obviously, it's tough to pick against them. I could see them losing as few as 25 games by the end of this season if they end up being the 1 seed, or slipping a little bit, maybe dealing with some post All-Star break injuries as they try and heal up heading into the playoffs. It's obvious they're going to make the playoffs, and so at that point, it's like, at what point do you kind of rest up, getting ready, and at what point do you fight for that 1 seed for the home advantage? But for me personally, I could see this team being the 2 seed going into the playoffs. That's my prediction for the team. Obviously not super bold, being that they're at the 1 spot right now, but I just think with some of the other teams and the strength of the Eastern Conference that they will drop a few games. They'll probably deal with, as I mentioned, some injuries, but definitely if you're a Heat fan, you're feeling encouraged, excited, and optimistic about going into any of these teams in the 7-game series. Next up are the Cleveland Cavaliers, and as a Pistons fan, just to address it now, Evan Mobley is my current Rookie of the Year. While I am a Pistons fan and I'm so excited about what we have building in Detroit, I just think that the Cleveland Cavaliers they're right there. They've made all the correct acquisitions, all the correct picks. Evan Mobley is playing just, in my opinion, similar to Bam Adebayo in the sense that every single play, every single game, they're going to give you their all. They're going to fight for the boards, and you could say the same for Jared Allen. After being traded from the Nets, I won't even lie, I kind of didn't really pay attention to him, but that dude has been putting up all-star numbers all season, and he deserves his flowers. Karis LeVert acquisition from the Pacers, obviously a phenomenal deal for putting Cleveland in that contention. My thing with Cleveland is, while they're playing very well right now, I still don't trust them. And it's probably the bias of never seeing a Cleveland team succeed without LeBron James. But for me personally, this team to me feels like a little bit closer to a 4 or 5 seed. Granted, they're 35-21, a great record, and they're 8-2 in their last 10. So for all intents and purposes, they could even end up jumping and going all the way up to the 1 seed. But for me personally, just a quick shout out to, of course, Jared Allen, Evan Mobley. It was sad that they traded away Ricky Rubio, but granted, with the injuries that he's been dealing with and the Cavaliers really seeing this as their opportunity. Darius Garland, too. Shout out to him. I'm surprised with the progression of how that's gone, because I thought coming into the year and coming into last year that Colin Sexton was going to be Kyrie Irving 2.0. For Cleveland, but Darius Garland, look out for him, because he is quietly putting together one of the best seasons that he's had. and it's super exciting for Cleveland fans all around. So I see Cleveland probably dropping to the 4-5 spot as some of these lower seeds start putting together their stretches heading into the play-in. The Chicago Bulls, 35-21, one game back from the 1 seed. This is obviously a team that I'm pretty high on. Obviously, I'm a Pistons fan, but the Chicago Bulls have a soft spot in my heart just because I grew up with a dad living in Naperville, Illinois. So, I grew up going to the occasional Chicago Bulls, Blackhawks games. I've some I like to see them do well. I'm not going to say I'm a Bulls fan per se, but it puts a smile on my face to see after so many years of mediocrity, after the Derrick Rose era, that they're finally there and they're finally putting together a competent roster. Now, obviously, I'm a huge Zach LaVine fan. DeMar DeRozan acquisition was super hated on at the start of or in the off season, and that's made a lot of really, really smart basketball people look really, really dumb for saying it was a bad pickup. Obviously, Vukovic is an all-star caliber center. Alex Caruso, Lonzo Ball healing up. When they come back, this team is only going to get better. And so at this point, it's a matter of staying in contention, staying in the running for that 1 seed until you can get your guys back and healthy. It's definitely a tough Eastern Conference. So I'm curious to see how down the stretch this team competes. But this feels like a solid team to me. I think I have them at the 3 seed where they're currently at. It's going to be an interesting series when they get to the playoffs because I don't see this Bulls team as particularly playing phenomenal defense. And maybe that's just recency bias with Lonzo and Caruso being out, but without those two pieces, I don't feel like they commit. It turns into like a shooting competition, like who's going to make the shot. Rather than like, let's focus on getting a stop. And it's a little bit discouraging to watch, at this point in the season when things can get a little bit slow and the weeks can become mundane. But the Chicago Bulls, to me, have all of the pieces to put together a strong end of the regular season. I think their big question mark comes from, does LaVine answer the critics? I mean, he feels like Devin Booker a few years ago, where it's like the empty stats. There are going to be a lot of people that look foolish when Zach LaVine puts up 28 and 10 in the playoffs. But it's just a matter of, can they all come together? Can the team gel together and actually put together a strong series against some of these contenders like the Bucks, the Sixers, the Nets, the Heat? For me personally, I would love to see the Bulls upset any of those teams, but I do think it will be an upset regardless of their matchup in the second round. So that'll be curious, and I'm really excited to see what they put together. Next up, the Milwaukee Bucks. Milwaukee Bucks are scary again. Obviously, when you have Giannis, you're always going to be right there in contention. But to have Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, and Giannis, to have Grayson Allen putting together one of his best seasons, absolute dog on defense and a solid three-point shooter. For me personally, I think that the acquisition of Serge Ibaka really puts this team into that they were already contenders. They're already right there, but it puts them at that next level of like, okay, they are a tough matchup and they're going to be a very tough out. And I do not envy whoever gets them in their first, second, or third round matchup because they are coming back with a vengeance and clearly not as slow of a start as they had to start the year, dealing with injuries and COVID and probably a little bit of fatigue from the championship. But Giannis has been consistently phenomenal all year. He's constantly in MVP discussions and DPOY discussions as well. So it'll be really, really fun to see how this team comes together. And I believe I have them as my number 1 seed. Just because of that Serge Ibaka pickup, my one question mark was Brook Lopez and whether or not he was going to be healthy enough to give them that solid center play. And while Serge Ibaka isn't the same player that we saw, a few years ago on the Raptors, or like the Serge Ibaka that we saw on the Clippers and way long ago, he still can contribute and still have that defensive impact. He can still hit a jump shot. And so, really excited to see how that trade pans out for the Bucks. Hopefully they can stay healthy and I don't look like a dumbass for putting them at number 1. But it'll be interesting. They're 7-3 in the last 10, and it'll be definitely interesting to see how they head into break and how they stay healthy through the rest of the season. Philadelphia 76ers. So this team obviously has been in the news a lot with the acquisition of James Harden, giving up Seth Curry, Ben Simmons, and Andre Drummond, along with 2 draft picks to get James Harden. For me, I have a lot more respect for Daryl Morey. I believe that's his name, GM of the Sixers, because for a really long time now, I've felt like they should have pulled the trigger on Ben Simmons and traded him a while ago, because I felt like that this Sixers team is still only I guess only a piece away or a couple pieces away from putting together a championship run. They've come close. They've had good series, and more importantly, they've had some really disappointing series. But for me, with the James Harden trade, it's going to be really interesting to see how he plays without the ball in his hand, because I think that's something we've seen historically with James Harden, is when he isn't the number one option, like he doesn't have a tendency to move a ton off ball. He kind of stands around. And for me personally, I just feel like it'll be really interesting to see how it works when Harden does come back. Is he going to be all in, giving his 100% every single night like he was when he first got to the Nets, or when he had those MVP caliber seasons in Houston? Or is he just going to be kind of not a role player, but kind of playing his role to keep Joel Embiid in the MVP conversation and keep the culture that they've established so far this year? On the flip side, I'll talk about the Nets in a little bit, but I do think that for the purposes of what they were missing, I think both teams did get what they needed. But for me personally, I'm just a little bit sad that the big 3 in Brooklyn didn't see it out. Obviously, if you're Brooklyn and you know James Harden's probably going to leave, you got to get something in return. But I was just disappointed. I was talking with my roommates, and we were really hoping to see it come to fruition and see what they could do, all 3 of them together healthy in a playoff series. But again, I think it's best for all parties involved that this is the outcome that happened now at the trade deadline. And really excited to see how they click, how they gel, if there's any growing pangs between James Harden and Joel Embiid trying to play together. But Philadelphia, they've got a chance this year, especially hanging on to Tobias Harris. Tyrese Maxey is a dog, never afraid of the moment, and Matisse Thybulle as well. Just a lockdown defender, can hit a shot when he needs to. Philadelphia did a great job hanging on to their young pieces throughout the James Harden negotiations, and really interested to see where they go, not only the rest of this year, but next year too, with Harden planning to stick around regardless of what happens this year. So I'm excited. I'm excited. And as a Detroit fan, I would definitely acknowledge that I'm not the biggest fan of Philadelphia 76ers fans. And I'm also slightly annoyed by the people who are now hopping onto the Philly bandwagon because James Harden went there. But I do think it'll be another great experiment to see, can James Harden get a ring? And I think it would be really, really cool to see Philadelphia go and win and get a ring, first ring, not only for Joel, but also for James Harden. I think that could be really special for Philadelphia. Obviously, I can't stand their fan base, but the players themselves, I'm definitely captivated by their narratives. Next up are the Toronto Raptors. Oh, and I had Philadelphia as the 6th seed because, again, I don't know where they're going to materialize after this trade goes down. Obviously, they're 7-3 in their last 10, so still hanging in there, only 2.5 games behind the 1 seed. For all I know, this could be the 1 seed heading into the playoffs. I may eat my words and stuff, but I do think Philly, certainly a playoff caliber team, and I would put them in contention now that they have a second superstar to go alongside with Joel Embiid. So I could see them first round exit or making it to the championship. It's really just a big question mark right now for this roster. Toronto Raptors, they are quietly putting together such a great season, and I did not expect it at all. Last year, I have such recency bias with this Toronto team, and I figured that once Lowry and Kawhi were out of town, that Toronto wasn't going to be good until they get that next superstar. But they're quietly putting together such an incredible year. They have Fred VanVleet, OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam. They have Scotty Barnes having an incredible rookie year. I would put him, in the rookie of the year like conversation, just based on the role he plays and the defensive strength of this team. Credit to Nick Nurse and to the whole squad in general. I had no idea Fred VanVleet could lead a team like this running point. And that was because I was sleeping on him. But in their last 10 games, they're 9-1. They've won 8 in a row. And I will probably be betting on them today because I think they're only a few point favorites against some team they're playing today. But I will probably be betting on them because you don't bet against an 8-game win streak. Next up, and I had the Toronto Raptors as the 7 seed. So again, still hanging in there, probably going to the play-in, just on my end because I don't trust them yet. I haven't seen enough Raptors games, but they are quietly putting together a great year. And a Raptors Heat potential first round series, I would be very captivated by that because this Raptors defense is underrated as hell. And no one's talking about them. I don't know why, but Toronto, dark horse pick for a potential Eastern Conference Finals run if they can upset the Heat or Bucks or Sixers in the first round. That would be not a bad pick, and Vegas is probably going to give them good odds. Boston Celtics, 7-game win streak. Jason Tatum, Al Horford, Jaylen Brown, of course. And honestly, I can't even name more players than that. And I apologize, but I can't really give a good synopsis on the Celtics because I don't even know who their best player. Marcus Smart, duh. And Dennis Schroeder, I believe, is still playing for them, but I think there was some sort of talks with him going back to the Lakers. I think trade deadline's over, so it won't happen, but for whatever reason, I've been seeing talks. So I don't know what's going on there, but the Celtics are quietly putting this run together to make a push for the playoffs. And obviously, we know Boston is a playoff caliber team, and we know that when healthy, they can compete and put up as many points as any of these other teams up here. My thing is the Boston fan base consistently seeing stuff where, like, for the last 3 years, it's been like, oh, break them up and get a different caliber player and let them flourish on their own. 2 great wing players. For me, I think it's great that they've kept them together. They're still so young and have so much time. And they're a team that's consistent. What was it? They've made 3 Eastern Conference Finals in the last 5 years. Don't quote me on that. I'm just rambling. But 3 in the last 5 years. Why would you split that up? They got the DNA. They're probably going to put together a run heading into the All-Star break and afterward. It's just a matter of where these teams fall because, again, the Celtics are going to be fine. They're going to make the play-in, if not the actual playoffs themselves. It's just a matter of that first round draw. And, after getting, 5 Nets in 5 last year, I don't know if that's the same story. If the Celtics make it as a 7 seed against, say, like a 2 seed Nets, I don't know if it's Nets in 5. Because again, I think that without that 3-headed monster that was building in Brooklyn, granted, Brooklyn's probably a more complete team now, but I do think that the Celtics are quietly putting together a much better season than they had last year, especially with Jaylen Brown finally healthy. And so I believe I had the Boston Celtics at the 8 seed. So again, maybe I'm doubting on them. Maybe they'll make a push for the 5, 6, or 7, maybe even 4 spot, but I don't know if I totally see this as a team number 1 seed. I don't totally take them seriously as contenders, but I very well could be, sleeping on them and just, yeah. Next up, the Brooklyn Nets. Such an interesting team and such an interesting experiment, going 0-10 in their last 10 with KD sidelined with an injury, James Harden kind of quitting on the team and sidelined with an injury, but he was putting up 4 points a game before. Like, those runs, I saw someone talking today about it, where it's like he puts together these runs when he needs to remind people and remind himself that I'm still that motherfucker. But the Nets and James Harden, it didn't click. And so now the Nets, for one thing, should feel lucky that they got something in return for James Harden, getting, again, as I mentioned, Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, and the best backup center, Andre Drummond. We miss you in Detroit, Andre, but happy that you're on a contending team. My thing is what the Nets are missing is some consistency. For one thing, but when you think about this roster, and you can leave your comment if you're actually interested in talking about this, but with this roster, just hypothetical. Let's say everyone's in, regardless of like the vaccine stuff with Kyrie. Kyrie Irving is in. And then you have Kyrie, KD, Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond. You've got Blake Griffin, Joe, what's his name? Joe Harris. He'll be back. He's a 40-plus point shooter from three. And granted, he had a bad playoff year last year in the playoffs, but dude can shoot the lights out. So for me, when you worry about what Ben Simmons failed to do in the playoffs, it was shooting, for one thing. That was one of his biggest critiques, but also kind of the psychology of it all, where he was like not playing as aggressive, getting to the rim. He was kind of trying to make everyone else do it. Kind of felt like the pressure was getting to him just a little bit. And so for me, I think it's very interesting because in this situation, he's going to have a lot less pressure. He's not expected to be Kyrie or KD. Kyrie or KD are going to be there doing their thing. And for Ben Simmons, it's about playing defense, which is something Brooklyn needs. And for me, I just think it's really interesting if you call it like a small ball lineup, except you have KD and Ben Simmons out there at the same time. You put Andre Drummond on the bench. So, and then let's say like Blake Griffin running center or something like that, some weird lineup, or Nick Claxton, excuse me. Ben Simmons can pass out literally anytime, and he's got Joe Harris, KD, Kyrie, Nick Claxton as like a potential cutter. Like, I can't envision him not getting 15 assists a game. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like if he can get in shape and get together, these Nets are going to be scary. And the fact that they're 6.5 games behind first in a conference that's so tight, I don't know if they're going to be a 1, 2, or 3 seed. For me, I believe I have them at 4. Yep, Brooklyn Nets at 4. So I don't even know. I just think for me, it's going to be interesting to see how Brooklyn gels together, how Ben Simmons gets back into shape, and whether or not he takes on that same pressure he was putting on himself and taking in from the public. I want to see Ben Simmons play well. The league is better when you have players, not getting broken by those pressure moments. But Ben Simmons is a dog, and anyone who says otherwise is just recency biasing it. And so it'll be fun to see. I'm going to tune into a lot more Nets games now that there's a different combo. But definitely I'm a little disappointed that I didn't get to see another playoff run with these three at the helm. But obviously W for both teams. And hopefully Pistons will be there soon. Next up at number 9, Charlotte Hornets. I was surprised with the Hornets not making a move for a big man. They have Mason Plumlee. Kelly Oubre is not necessarily a big man, but he kind of plays that role from time to time. They have another player I'm forgetting too that is a big man option. But for me, with LaMelo, Terry Rozier, and Gordon Hayward, it's kind of front court heavy or back court heavy. And so I just don't know if I see this Hornets team being able to compete with like who would guard Giannis in a 7-game series? And like, how do you stop him from getting 60 points a game in that matchup? I don't think the Hornets have that. Now, granted, I don't know if the Bucks would probably lock LaMelo up pretty good in a playoff series, but I just think with you have the pieces, and you have Miles Bridges for another thing. That's a great name that I haven't even thrown out. Michigan State grad, been tracking him for a few years now. Fingers crossed that maybe he'll consider Detroit in the offseason this year, but obviously just meeting him where he's at. He's still on the Hornets. He's having a most improved player season. I don't know if he'll win it, but he's definitely in the running. So happy for the guy, happy for the Hornets to be in this position, but obviously 3-7 in the last 10. They appear to be one of the teams that are slipping, and they haven't necessarily had the most setbacks per se. Like, I don't want to diminish their experience so far, but I feel like there have been teams who have had it a lot worse, like maybe even the Hawks or the Nets, or who are, playing better basketball than them and who are going to end up playing better than them after the All-Star break. So I wouldn't be surprised if I see Charlotte drop down to the 10 seed. I do think that the 10 that are listed here are the teams that make the playoffs. Maybe that's, again, just recency bias, but I don't like what I've seen from the Knicks in the last few weeks. A lot of forced mid-range jumpers that just don't really make sense, but I'll get to them in a little bit. But that's the Charlotte Hornets. I could see them winning a play-in game, but I just don't know if I could see, like with LaMelo, you always have a chance. But is this a team that you seriously think can go up against a Philadelphia 76ers or a Milwaukee Bucks or a Miami Heat in a 7-game series and come out on top? I don't think so. Time will tell. Atlanta Hawks at 10. This team's 6-4 in their last 10. So of these like 3 teams in the 8 through 10, they're playing, honestly, of the 8 and down, they're showing the most promise to make a push before this All-Star break. And honestly, we know with our expectations and seeing Trae Young and that squad take the Hawks to the Eastern Conference Finals against the Bucks last year. I don't know that this roster is obviously they're not showing the qualities of a championship team, but I do see them as a team that makes that jump at least a little bit higher in the play-in. I have them at 9. So again, that's mostly just because of the top heavy length of the league. And I don't know if I really trust this Hawks team. Part of that too, recency bias. I bet on the Hawks last night against the Spurs and they let up like 140 points to the Spurs. Now, DeJounte Murray is that dude, but like, come on now, like get a fucking stop. So I don't know. You can't beat teams by just out shooting them from 3-point land, and you got to win at home. You got to play defense at home. And I didn't see it yesterday. And it was very disappointing. I thought they were going to put together a run and then there was a 3 by the Spurs and it just killed all the momentum. If the Spurs are beating them at home, I don't know if I trust them to beat any of these top contenders, but again, it'll be interesting. Let's not be victims of the moment. The Hawks were there last year. They're putting together somewhat of a run this year. Could definitely see them winning the playoff or play-in game tournament, or like getting a spot in as a 7 or 8 seed and having a real shot if they were to go up against, say, like I don't know. I don't know if there's a matchup that I would pick them for, but I could see them competing in any of these series. It's just a matter of, do I see them coming out on top? Last year, sure. This year, I don't quite think so. Now I'm going to talk kind of broadly about 11 through 14 because, just speaking candidly, I don't watch these teams as intently. There are some headlines that I could talk about a little bit. So the Wizards trading for Kristaps, getting rid of Dinwiddie and Bertans. I like the trade more for the Wizards because Dinwiddie and Bertans are 2 players that haven't been playing very well this season. But Kristaps is on that same boat where he like puts together a good stretch and then he's out for like more than 10 games at a time and he just can't seem to stay healthy. You wonder if that's partially like a culture thing with Dallas, or maybe that's just bad luck. I don't really know, but I'm curious to learn more and to watch his progression in Washington. I think Beal being out for the season is interesting, and I'm very curious to see what he does in the offseason. I wouldn't put it past him to re-sign and try to make it work with this squad, but every year that Bradley Beal, that it goes by and the Wizards aren't like a 6 or higher seed, it just kind of pisses me off because Bradley Beal, like for so long, was like that scoring title contender, and he still is a great player. And I just wonder how he'll do if he were to, say, go join like imagine him on the Mavs. Granted, I know Luka doesn't need a secondary star to make the playoffs, but we haven't really seen him win a series yet on his own. And having a dude like that can get his own shot, that can make his own plays, would really take a lot of pressure off Luka when he's getting sent with double, triple teams heading into the playoffs. Granted, he probably, is showing that loyalty, and I have tremendous respect for that. It's just, for me personally, I'm just getting a little bit tired of seeing him in Washington and seeing him lose in Washington, especially to have a season-ending injury for the wrist. It's just discouraging, and it puts a bad taste in my mouth. The New York Knicks, they did not make a trade before the deadline. A lot of teams thought that they were going to trade Mitchell Robinson to Detroit. A lot of teams thought that they were going to try and potentially package Fournier. and maybe even Randle. There were some whispers that Julius Randle was growing a little bit unsettled in New York. I'm not going to overreact to that. I think that New York has shown a lot of faith in him, and it's totally natural to get frustrated when you're not winning, especially when they were like playing quite well and in that contention for the 3 through 6 seed at this point last year. So you're definitely disappointed if you're a Knicks fan, and you're definitely thinking about like, where do we go from here? But don't overreact to the Julius Randle play as of recent, because I do think that he will be fine and he will find his rhythm, whether it's this season or next season, whether it's with the Knicks or with someone else. I would say it's very typical for the Knicks fans to turn very quickly on their most improved player from last year. Granted, it's been a down year, but have some patience, Knicks fans. Coming from a Pistons fan, just relax a little bit. They're going to be fine, and focus on developing RJ into an even better scorer. I do think that he's going to take another leap next year into a potential like 25, 5-5 guy. That's what I see for RJ. It's just a matter of taking the right shots, and he takes some fucking boneheaded shots sometimes. So I don't know what the Knicks are doing. I don't know what Tom Thibodeau's doing. I don't understand the Cam Reddish thing. He's not getting minutes, and Tom Thibodeau's talking about how he didn't want him anyway. I don't even know. But I think Cam Reddish is a solid player who can play well alongside RJ Barrett or behind RJ Barrett. And so it's just a matter of making it click and making it work and finding the culture, whether it's this year or next year. Be patient, Knicks fans. Root on Brooklyn if you want to. I know you won't. But find a team to root for, because I don't think it's going to happen for you this year, unfortunately. That may come back to bite me, and they may be the 6th seed next time I make a video. But I just think that you should be a little more patient. Now, Pacers acquiring Tyrese Halliburton, Buddy Hield, some draft picks. I'm probably forgetting someone else they got. They also shipped Karis LeVert to the Cavs, as we discussed, and sent away Domantas Sabonis for obviously the picks I just went through. So I watched the Pacers-Cavs game last night. Tyrese, I heard someone say, I'm not going to take credit for this line, but Tyrese plays basketball the way, as a basketball fan, you just love to watch. He is so committed to getting his teammates looks, and he has such a good jump shot. Maybe not like the prettiest. He looked a little weird shooting threes, but I'm not going to critique a man's jump shot. I shot two-handed till I was in 9th grade. So none of that here, but I'm just saying, like, dude is a dog. And the Pacers, I think Pacers and the Kings, as much as it was such a shock, like for me, I was like, what the hell are they doing? The Kings? I do think that the Pacers are happy with this. They have a young core that they can build around. Tyrese and Buddy Hield is going to end up probably the best 3-point shooter of all time. Not saying the best like the GOAT, because Steph is the GOAT in that regard, obviously. But Buddy Hield just has the green light. And to go to Indiana, where they, I don't want to say they know what they're doing more than Sacramento, but they feel it's a fresh start for Buddy Hield. And I'm excited to see how it plays out. I thought that they played well last night and then let off the gas a little bit in the second half to tank. For that reason, I do anticipate Pacers not making the play-in. Obviously, they're about 8 games behind the 10 seed. So it's a fair assessment, and it does appear that they're going to be tanking to try and get better odds for the lottery. But if you are a Pacers fan, you're definitely feeling better. Feeling better about the direction. You got some great pieces for what it is. And honestly, you look at it too, Ricky Rubio, I think he might have an expiring contract, but if he were to stay and be your 6th man next year, that's just added depth. You got Chris Duarte coming in as a solid play from a rookie. Next up are the Orlando Magic. And again, I'm going to be quick with the Magic, but Franz Wagner, the Wagner brothers, they're super fun to watch. I have tremendous respect for Cole Anthony and Jalen Suggs. I think those pieces are aging like a fine wine. Now, Jalen Suggs, I don't know if I'm going to put it in there that like he's having a rookie of the year candidacy year, because I think he's more playing his role in developing. But they've got some stuff building in Orlando. I was sad that Mo Bamba didn't come to Detroit. I heard some whispers about that, maybe in the off season, but I don't even know what that's going to look like. But I'm just excited as hell for this Magic team. I think it's a fun NBA experience when you see young teams like this rebuild like the Grizzlies did and start to make some noise. While I don't think this is by any means the year they're 13-44, I think they're going to get a solid pick next year, whether it's, Jabari Smith out of Auburn, that Chet dude out of Gonzaga, Bonchero from Duke or Kentucky. Forgive me, I'm not the biggest college basketball follower, but there are some big names at the top of this upcoming draft. And if the Orlando Magic can get like a solid power forward center, a solid unicorn like Jabari Smith, granted, I want Jabari Smith for the Pistons because I think that would like be a huge pickup for this team. If the Magic got them, stay sleeping on them for another 2 years, but they're going to be there in the play-in and in the 6-5-4 seed when they make an acquisition for a big name. So keep an eye on the Magic. They're doing a great work rebuilding, and Franz Wagner is right there with Cade in second place for Rookie of the Year in my book. Cade just needs to get healthy. And that brings me to my next team, the Detroit Pistons. Lot to root for. For the first time in what feels like probably 3-4 years, the Pistons have a sense of momentum and a sense of heading in the right direction. Cade, generational talent. I'm not going to over speculate and over expect anything out of him because that's what Detroit fans tend to do a lot, and it really bugs me sometimes. What we're seeing out of him is promising. The turnovers are going to fade with time. As he ages, as he gets more experience, and as he has the ball in his hands more, yes, he will make some mistakes, but he's hitting shots down the stretch. He's making clutch plays. He's fighting on defense, and he's fighting to get to the rim. Super exciting stuff. As well, we just picked up Marvin Bagley III from the Kings in exchange in that 14 trade for Trey Lyles, Josh Jackson, and a couple picks. Was sad to see Josh Jackson depart. Trey Lyles as well. Personally, I was kind of expecting anyone not named Cade or Sadiq to be traded. And so I've been expecting it for a little bit. But the thing is I'm not I call myself a Pistons fan. I'm not the number one Pistons fan in the world. I'm an NBA fan, and I get a lot of widespread, like who's playing and what's a good game. So I don't know this Pistons roster as in depth as I should. One thing I do know, though, is that Hamidou Diallo needs to hit his fucking free throws. He went 0 for 6 last night in a loss to the Hornets when we lost by 20. I don't really care. We were down 20 at the half, so it was like I didn't even watch the second half, basically. But as I was watching the line, I was like 0 for 6 and you had 16 points. You could have been right there and play. Like, I don't know. It is frustrating. And for me, I don't think Dwayne Casey firing is the correct move for the organization. I think that you should stick with him at least till the end of this year, if not even maybe a little bit into next year. But if there's a head coaching candidate that you like, there are a couple assistant coaches on this team that have stepped up when Casey was out, and they ended up winning those games. And it makes you just kind of wonder the direction. Obviously, we're trying to get a good draft pick because another piece or two would be exactly what Detroit needs. But for me, I just have a little bit of a hard time getting my head around, he won't be the coach a year from now. And so it's just a matter of when do you let him go? When do you time it up to get a good head coach in that you're excited about, that can really develop Cade? And the Jeremy Grant thing, I have a lot of conflicting thoughts on it. Because for me, I have been very excited watching Jeremy Grant blossom from like a decent role player into like a dude that can put up 25 and 6 and 6 a game. Not talking averages, but just saying he can do that. So that's been exciting as hell, but it's also discouraging because I haven't seen a game where he's played and the Pistons have won in like 4 months. And so for me, I don't know. I don't know what you do if you're the Pistons with Jeremy Grant. Obviously, you probably wait it out and try to hang on to him because he is not hurting the team's success. He's, playing his role. If anything, it just concerns me taking those touches away from Cade, letting Killian Hayes develop. That's another interesting discussion. I think he keeps Sadiq Bey because he's shown flashes of what you hope to see out of Killian Hayes. But Killian had 11 and 12 assists last night to go with 1 turnover coming off the bench. I think if you can develop him into that 6th man, 7th man role, which is again is what they're doing right now, but if you can continue building him up, it's only going to make him better. And this dude is younger than I am. So I'm not going to overreact like I see a lot of just casual NBA fans doing, like, oh, Killian Hayes had like, oh, he went like 2 for 10 and 4 turnovers. Yeah, dude. So did I when I was in high school practices. Like, just go easy on him. He's still learning. And the last thing I think Pistons fans need to do is set unrealistic expectations for a dude that's fucking 20 years old, because that's what we're doing with Cade a little bit. And for me, I would just prefer to expect the minimum out of our players, expect the minimum, but hope for the best. Again, a saying is you got to see gray to see golden. We're seeing some gray years in the Detroit. We've seen some gray years in the Detroit fan base for years now. And this kind of feels like the first glimpse of golden of things to come. So definitely excited about this squad, excited for years to come. I think in 2 years, a year or two, we're fighting for a play-in spot. And then hopefully if we can just get over that hump and make the playoffs, I do think that Detroit basketball will be back. But we just have to be patient and just hope for the best, fingers crossed. But definitely a little bit of a tough year for me as a Detroit fan, seeing so much losing. But that is the Eastern Conference ramblings, and those are my thoughts. Again, here are my predictions, and I also have some picks for tonight. Obviously, I'm a money line guy. I think it's more fun to parlay stuff when it's like money lines because the covers are so unpredictable sometimes. But for me personally, the locks that I have, and let me go to the actual games so I know who's playing who, but my locks, please don't take my advice. Please don't put bets on this because I don't know what I'm talking about, just the same as you probably do more so than I do. But the Raptors are playing the Nuggets. The Nuggets lost last night. Raptors are 4-point favorites. I think with Jokic as the only main scoring option and Aaron Gordon he's playing pretty well. You know what his value is, but Jokic is the guy you're worried about. And I think the Raptors defense has been so locked down. They're on that 8-game win streak. I think Raptors money line is an easy bet here. Mavericks are playing the Clippers, so I'm going to take Mavs money line. Clippers have made some great moves, and I'll talk about that in my Western Conference breakdown. But I'm going to take Mavs money line, and then I'm going to go Luka over on points and assists. Careful with that one, though. He had an insane game with like 28 in the first quarter the other day against this Clippers team, and I could definitely see them shooting double teams at him from the minute they go. So maybe just do the assists, maybe not the points, but I do think he puts up maybe 32 and 12. That's my prediction. And then Warriors playing the Lakers. I'll talk about the Lakers quite a bit in my Western Conference breakdown, but what a dog shit roster that they've put together. I think Warriors win by at least 10. And if the Lakers win, I will release a video tomorrow talking about how I was wrong about the Lakers, but I don't want to overreact and do all this stuff. The Warriors are a number 2 seed playing against a Lakers team that's been consistently 500 and just lost to a beat up to a Blazers squad that's the equivalent of like a JV team. Not to disrespect those players on the Blazers, but like, you're not playing Dame, you're not playing CJ. How do you lose that game with AD and LeBron in? It baffles me. And I don't know if they've got the firepower to keep up with the Warriors offense that has been playing decent. I bet Steph goes crazy in a game against LeBron. Might be a good pick too, Steph over on points. I would probably put that in there as well. But that is it and you can take a look at those other money line picks. The Spurs is my one upset pick. They, hurt me yesterday, so may as well pick them today. But that is the end of my first video for YouTube. So just want to say thank you so much if you did stick it out to the end. I hope you enjoyed the content. And if you have any recommendations or any thoughts, questions you may have about the NBA or just as a Pistons fan or just my life in general, feel free to leave a comment. But love you, spread love today, and hope you have a great rest of your day.